growth happens outside of your comfort zone. The problem is people like to talk about it, but when you're truly feeling uncomfortable, unsafe, destabilized because you're letting go of the track you've gone down your entire life, that's when your like real courage and resolve is tested. And so that's where the real work is. It's letting go of what you're holding on to that's keeping you safe so that you can go down a different path. Welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, and today I want to talk to you about starting new, starting over. You know, what's interesting, I heard Michael Pollan one time he's a botanist and he's also done some psychedelic research, and one of the things he was talking about is how over time our minds and our neural networks become patterned. You could think of your ego, or you could think of your thoughts that you have, the reaction that you have to things as what you've been patterned for. And so over a long period of time, those patterns become really, really ingrained. And so you could think of it like a metal runner sled. Now, this is the example that Michael Pollan gave. And so essentially, if you think about those metal running sleds, you would go down and it would carve a little bit of a groove in the hard packed snow or the ice. Only time those damn things ever worked. So if you're on hard packed snow or ice, it would create a little groove. And you could imagine that if you go down that hill over and over for lots of different times, you are going to find yourselves getting stuck in those grooves over and over. And so eventually, even though you have the entire hill, you could go down any which way you wanted. Over time, if you've only gone down 3 or 4 ways, then those paths are going to become like ingrained in the snow. And so then you won't really have a choice because you'll fall into those paths. And that's how most of us are living our lives. We have these patterns and these grooves and we're falling into them. And what we really need is someone to come and wipe all of the snow flat and then tell us, hey, you can go wherever you want. Because that's the interesting thing about our mindset, right? It's like if you think about your life now and the life that you want, there's actually not a lot of anything physical in between those two things, right? It's actually you allowing yourself to do it. And so allowing yourself and having the courage to start over in something, I think that's the key, right? Because you have to let go of those tracks that you're going down to do something else. It's like I keep finding in my life that if I want something new, there's something I'm holding on to that I have to let go, because we have such a limited amount of bandwidth and such a finite understanding of things in this life that we can't hold on to everything. You can't hold on to your old patterns that are keeping you from growth and still growing. It just doesn't work that way. Like we're too finite of beings to be able to do that. And you know, it's funny because everyone wants to know the hack. Like they want to know the trick that's going to make them successful or that's going to allow them to figure it out. And you know, there's only one real hack, and that's to change your mind. Like everything you're doing, all of the habits and tricks, they're aimed at doing one thing, and that's changing the way that you're thinking. And it truly doesn't matter in the end whether you go behavior first or not. All that you know, or all that matters, is that you know you've changed, right? Because if you think about it, if you know you've changed, then guess what? Right, exactly. You've changed. And so, but it's in the allowing. Remember, it's not something physical that's between this track we're going down and that track that we'd like to go down. It's just the story that we're telling ourselves is so patterned and so rote that we end up falling into it. It's interesting because in my work with the Clarity Academy, I keep finding, you know, we help position people to live the life that they want to live, but then there's a part where it actually just becomes courage to tell yourself something new and to actually live that out. And so what you have to let go is your sense of safety that's keeping you where you're at. And so you have to, if you want to truly change your mind and become someone new, then you have to be willing to do that. And you know, one of the ways that I sort of mentally reset myself so that I can start new, I can go down a new path, I can find the answer that I don't have right now, right? It's like that's what you're actually looking for. It's like you're looking to tell yourself something new or to change your mind so that you can allow yourself to just step into the life you want. Because again, it's almost never physical. It's actually just all of the ideas about our lives that we're holding on to that's not allowing us to go that other way. But the good news is, you know, this is the thing I always remind myself is like, you don't have to do a single thing, right? Like it's your show, kid. Like you're an adult. And I tell myself that often because, you know, we forget. We've been conditioned and patterned. We're going down the same route over and over. We forget that we actually have the entire hill. And we feel boxed in because we keep falling into these same grooves. And so you got to understand that like you're everything, right? And I talk about that all the time. It's like you're the tyrant and the liberation in your life. Like whatever it is that you want to do, it's you're the roadblock. It's always going to come down to that, right? And so that's why it's so important that you change your mind. Like you have the courage to let go of the mindset that you've held on to that's keeping you safe so that you can do something else. And so you got to understand that it's you that's got their hand on the throttle. And you can look back at your life, and this is what I try to do. It's like those moments that were hard but seemed to happen exactly as they were supposed to, those unexplainable moments of serendipity. It's like, how do you always get what you need? You have to ask yourself that, right? It's like, because you do. And I think it's because despite your best human efforts to sabotage the whole thing, my personal belief, and I know that this is open, anybody can believe anything, but what I believe is that your soul has been opening and closing doors as needed, lighting the path along the way with adventures, misadventures, love that would make a lifetime of pain worth it in a second, right? And we tend to look back and we think about the pain, but we don't think about the love that was actually worth it. If we did, it'll change our narrative a little bit. And I think because sometimes it feels so chaotic and sometimes the mess feels like it's all just far too much to handle. But in those moments, you got to try to remember that you've always gotten what you've needed. You've always gotten what you've always needed, right? And that's just true. That's true for me. And I think that's because deep down, you always knew what that was. Like you've always known what you needed. Sometimes you find yourself putting you could ask yourself, and I actually try to quite often ask people, like, what's the most transformational part of your life? It's almost always the hardest thing you've gone through. It was the breakup you didn't think you could stomach, the losing the job you didn't think you could have. And a lot of times that these things happen in ways that feel really like malevolent or vicious, or it feels like the universe is against us, or at least indifferent, like something will just like tear away from us. But you've got to remember it's you. So it's you that has to change their mind. And so if you want to go down a different path, sometimes if you just don't let go of the life that you're holding on to and it's not the one that's serving you, the universe just comes and tears it away from you sometimes. And I think personally, what my deepest belief is that somewhere in the back, I think you're sort of architecting a lot of your experience and putting yourself in situations that you would never put yourself into, right? Like your awareness wouldn't. But all of that, be that as it may, I think it's important to understand like your life, it's a product of who you are. Like your thoughts, beliefs, habits, tendencies, they all come together to form your experience. And that's the trail that you keep going down. And you'll change only when you're ready to, because it's only you that must choose to be different. And so when I talk about choosing to, remember the only thing that truly matters is that you change your mind. If you believe that you've changed your mind, you have changed your mind. And it doesn't matter if you go habit first or thought first. What matters is that you truly change your perspective in the way that you're looking at yourself so that you can find a different trail, right? And so I think sometimes we put ourselves in these really tough situations in life because we're not going to find another trail on our own, but deep down somewhere, maybe at a soul level, at an unconscious level, it's got to happen. And I think that's why a lot of times you look at the worst thing that's ever happened to you and it turns out to be the best or the most transformational because you were holding on to things that just weren't serving you and you never would have let them go on your own. And so that would be one of the things that I wanted to get across today, which is if you want something new, you've got to let go of what you're holding on to and allow yourself to find those new trails and understand that that's when people talk about growing and being uncomfortable, that's where the work is. Everyone loves to talk about it and they like to get uncomfortable in only ways that they're comfortable with. Like, for example, I'm really comfortable getting uncomfortable physically, so I can run ultra marathons, I can do these endurance events, the bike, whatever. That's my comfort zone, truly. But when you come to like letting go of old thoughts and beliefs so that you can go down a different path, that's discomfort that feels destabilizing and unsafe. And that's why people don't, right? That's why people don't actually grow and change a lot of times because they're too goddamn afraid to let go of what they're holding on to. I've gone sort of all over the place in these last 8 to 10 minutes talking about my own beliefs with soul and whatever. But what I'm actually wanting to get at, like the point that I'm actually trying to tee up here is that everything that you think about your life, your thoughts, your habits, your actions, they're patterns, right? The thing that's holding you back is never something physical. It's a patterning, it's a programming. And so you have the opportunity to let it go, but you got to have the courage to do it, and that's what it all comes down to. You have to have the courage to change your mind and tell yourself something else. If you tell yourself you're stuck, right? That's it. But if you tell yourself something more conducive that allows you to actually take steps in the direction you want to go. It's uncomfortable because you're not used to it, but it's necessary. It's what you have to do. That's why growth happens outside of your comfort zone. The problem is people like to talk about it, but when you're truly feeling uncomfortable, unsafe, destabilized because you're letting go of the track you've gone down your entire life, that's when your like real courage and resolve is tested. And so that's where the real work is. It's letting go of what you're holding on to that's keeping you safe so that you can go down a different path. That's been my experience anyway. I love you guys. I hope you have an amazing day. We'll talk tomorrow on Morning Coffee.
Oh, you wake up every single morning. Remember you were younger and did everything you wanted. Didn't ever worry, only had a dream and you chased it. Now you realize your time was wasted, driving up the whack shit. Look at those who make it. Takes hard work and practice. Nothing comes easy, they say, but